Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Have you ever visited a place so strange, so charged, that it felt like something followed you home? Maybe it wasn't a ghost, maybe it wasn't anything you could actually see. Today we're going to explore the Hitchhiker Effect, where science and the supernatural cross paths.
I mean, we have something called the Hitchhiker Effect that we have been documenting, which is the phenomena where people who come out to Skinwalker Ranch and participate in various experiments and visit, when they leave and they go home, things follow them. Whether it be orbs, poltergeist-like phenomena, strange things follow them home. In some cases, terrorize their family. I've had a number of people on my team that have unfortunately ended up in the hospital with strange illnesses and injuries that the medical professionals state defy any conventional explanation.
In paranormal circles, the Hitchhiker Effect refers to a chilling phenomenon. People who visit certain hotspots of high strangeness, places like the infamous Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, often report that something follows them home. Witnesses say the activity continues far from the ranch or the originating location. Things like electronics malfunctioning, orbs appearing in their bedroom, people feel watched, objects move on their own, and this isn't just from long exposure at a place. Some visitors report these effects after a single night wherever they were. Researchers who've studied these anomalies describe it like picking up a passenger. Something latches onto them, metaphysically or otherwise, and stays with them. But how and why? Some theories include electromagnetic imprinting, quantum entanglement with their consciousness, psychological suggestions, and trauma responses. But whatever it is persistent. So here's how things get weird. You're visiting a hotspot or a place with odd activity. You're a neutral participant in the situation, but something gets pulled toward you, or it gets attracted to you. You're a harmless visitor leaving the location, and the strangeness follows you. It rides along, not because it should, but because it can. And then even though you are headed to a new location, or maybe even home, a passenger is on board with you. You have a hitchhiker. And now, you may have taken on more than you had hoped for. Okay, so we're going to talk here about the Hitchhiker Effect, and I'm excited because I have a returning voice and a subject matter expert in this area as a MUFON investigator and just well aware of this space, Fred Zowie. Fred, how's it going, my friend? So glad to have you back with us.
Great, man. That's like, talking about all things in the past that kind of pop up and things of that nature, and it is kind of strange how things affect us, at certain times.
Right. Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
I'm really getting into the quantum aspect of it, the quantum principles and the quantum aspect of it that you can't ignore it anymore. It just pops up, and there's this feeling, I'm reading books about I don't know if you know Tyler Koala. He's out of Missouri. He's out of St. Louis, and he's had a lot of experiences, and he was one of these guys with a 20 and out in the secret space program, and then he's got a book called Breakthrough, and so all these memories are coming back on him,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it's kind of like a hitchhiker effect, and you start talking about it, then all of a sudden it starts triggering another person and another person, and you go, oh, that's really strange, like...
Yeah.
And so everybody's starting to think a little bit out of the box,
For sure. everywhere. Science, everybody is willing to think a little bit. Politically, you just pick anything. People cannot now ignore some of the strangeness that's out there.
I mean, just a couple of days ago, my wife and I go, today was so weird. I mean, I was not grounded, and it's like everything was crazy. It didn't feel like a day. It's like something's weird going on, something really is strange, weird going on. So you're picking up the social economics or even global collective going on, something going on. So you get really super sensitive, and like, what is going on? Something ain't happening, But
right.
Then again, you're going to expect this with a Trump coming in with all the other crazy things going on.
Yeah.
You're going to
so
go
much
bang,
weird
bang.
energy. Yeah.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
Well, look, let's first identify this for people. Hitchhiker Effect.
Right.
How would you define this for people? Because, this whole thing, there's a lot of thoughts about this, and there's probably many aspects to it, but how would you define it for people?
Well, it's again, I have to use the quantum experience, where, you can have something in a room, and a person will come in, and they'll, there's something really weird in this room. I don't know what it is, and of course, we've got the Skinwalker Ranch, TV show, and we're talking a little about that, where a lot of the people were, you have this. I think there's a polarity shift, and when with UFOs and everything, they always got your trike meter out. You're like,
right,
trying to figure out if there is a distortion in gravitational fields, and that is a big hint of UFO activity because there's a shift in gravity, and so we go around with the meters, and then people feel weird or odd, and then even the people, if they stand in one location, they get hit. And that one guy had the little head problem,
right?
And like his head expanded and it kind of burst on the top of the head. The guy and he was just standing there, and then things happen. So there's that word terminology that's like a geophysical psychism, that happens, and it's in that particular quadrant of energy, and that one person may be affected. And I think Travis Taylor, he had it, he got hit, like, man, and then the next guy stood there in that spot, got affected as well, so it can be spatial, it can be a portal, it could be whatever, but yet again, once you start thinking about it and talking about it, then I think that Brandon guy who owns Skinwalker now, he doesn't even talk about it at home, and he doesn't bring his children and his family out to the ranch because of that, because of
That's right.
because of the Hitchhiker Effect, and that. So it's almost like you kind of think about, that you pick up entity in this Tyler Koala guy. He didn't know he had a hitchhiker on him. He had a spiritual attachment.
Right.
So I don't know, and I think I talked about, and so he had some Reiki gal work with him, and he finally got this entity, this attachment off of him, and all of a sudden he had all this other energy that was brought into his body after he got the attachment taken off of him. I mean, you think about that, it's like, how strange is that? It's like, how could that have happened? And then all of a sudden, that's the part of the Hitchhiker Effect. Where did this entity go? And it's usually connected to drugs, alcohol, and if you're really an alcoholic, then you get this attachment. And so this is the Hitchhiker Effect. They go, and there's this split in the mindset of something of that nature. You could have a breakdown, a mental breakdown. There's a breach in consciousness, and that's where the entity comes in and attaches itself. And so he said there's even sexual, if not even drugs, sexual addiction where he said, I can't believe that I'm being controlled by this entity. I didn't know I was being controlled by this entity. And I'm reading this book, I'm like, wow, that is pretty strange, to think about that. And it's really, really true, And of course, there's that aura. We call it the aura, that certain people have that have her in drugs or alcohol and vice versa, and there's this feel to them. It's like, and, and just day-to-day stuff. You can walk into a room or a group of people and you can go, funk. It's that person, I can feel that person,
Yeah.
And so it's just almost a psychism, and it's when you get into the quantum, you call it entanglement. Everybody's entangled, and so depending on your sensitivity and things of that nature, you can pick up that person or that thing. And I think I told you about, when there's emotional disturbance, and then I was going to talk to you about the Lincoln Capitol, where again on the top of the dome there was a scaffolding all the way up to the inside of the dome, and a situation happened where the guy fell off the scaffolding and screamed all the way down, and then thunk, hit dirt, and every once in a while you hear people say, "There's a man screaming coming down," and it's his death call. And again, it imprints into the materium, into the concrete and the walls themselves. And like I said, every year somebody might even hear that at that particular time when he jumps or falls off the scaffolding and gets killed, that this hitchhiker effect happens, and vice versa. So yeah, there's the dark entities, that supposedly, that people see in the room, and like, what is that, and people, like don't want to, it's like put their old finger up and like, it's like don't touch to me, I'm out of here, You start running off, you actually physically start running from them,
Yeah.
And that's like, again, I just talking about the paranormal folks. That's I don't want, I'm a high viber and a high energy type of person. I probably will, the entities probably would stay away, But yet again, I don't want to go into parapsychology and go into a paranormal hunt just for that reason. I don't want entity attached to me,
Right. They're sticky.
Well, we got the haunted house. We got this one house there's been a lot of murders in it. They're in this little town, and everybody goes to it because they want to get spooked, they want to get scared. And then the next thing you know is like, stuff happens in their life, right after they've gone to this, this house or whatever, and I don't understand people who, of course, they're just thinking wanting to get scared, but yet they don't realize it's real.
Well, and that kind of brings me to one of the questions I was going to ask you, and you're sort of answering it right now, because we know about Skinwalker Ranch and its stories, right?
Sure.
But are other places also susceptible to that? And it sounds like yes, right? Like what we're talking about right now. There is attachable things that you can draw to you in those places. And maybe they're not well-known places. They're just, like you said, maybe some local spot that's got some negative energy of things that have happened. It's crazy.
Well, you got Sedonia, Arizona. I mean, that's a big portal area, and there's positive and negatives, and I can't remember the guy, Jerry Wills, that's the guy. He went down there, and he was working on a vibrational toning, and all of a sudden this portal opened up, and the Native American says, "Don't go into it. You may not be able to come back." He went into it, disappeared, and he said it took him an hour to get out of it. He said, and he got down. Once he left the portal, he was down on his knees, kissing the ground, and said, "I never thought I was going to get out of there."
Wow.
Like the national parks with 411 with David Pilates. There's a portal there, and the next thing you know, the kid's gone, or the parents gone, and all of a sudden and people will say, "I can hear them talking, but I can't see them." Crazy. And so they just got into the portal, and they can't find their way out. That's just
freaky.
life. That's life, and that's the psychic dimensional shifts with the portals and things of that nature. They're very natural. They may turn on, turn off, and that's, that's very real. I have to say it's very real. And Jerry Wills, he said, I bless my heart, that I got out of there, and he tells that story very, very well. And
You're right.
It spooked me even,
Oh yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I'm curious about your opinion on this, because we know that some of the stories of what follows people, there's everything from something that looks skinwalker-ish or man, like a dog man, to just a dark entity, almost like a... Is there anything else that you're aware of that is also... And orbs and things like that. Is there anything else that you're aware of on top of those that you've maybe heard also falls into this following people around?
Well, that I don't know. I can't think of anything right now off the top of my head of people having attachments and and having shadow beings. That's a very common thing. I mean, like with some of my ERT cases, they'll say, they'll just say, when I was little, she'll say, oh yeah, this was the gal down in New Orleans area, and she said, the people saw this black shadow being over in the room, and she goes, oh, that's all right, that's just a shadow being, blah, 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 blah. And, and she somehow kind of hopefully talked to it and left it alone. And, children are very susceptible to that because, they're more into, they're already in the theta state most of the time. They haven't created their beta state or their rational conscious mind. So they're all functioning in the theta level. So they're seeing apparitions. They're seeing shadow people. They're seeing little folks. They can even see the ETs walking in, and they just say, oh, they're my friends. It's always the when little kids say, oh, my special friend, the little stories, like, oh, yeah, then imagination, they think they have a real creative imagination. Well, it's not. It's they're really seeing these beings coming forward, Yeah.
Well, just jokingly, I was going to say, this just happened to me yesterday. So one of my granddaughters was over, and she was in the basement. We were moving some stuff around, and I heard a voice talking down there. And I walked down there, and I look around the corner, and I see her sitting there on this little chair talking to nobody. And I said, honey, what are you doing? She goes, oh, I'm talking to my friend. I'm like, oh, yeah? What's he look
there
like?
There it is. There's the
right? Just like what we're talking about. Really weird.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just happens. Again, that's why in the Catholic religion, at age 7, they're brought into the church because at age 7, you're totally functional with a rational mind, and the rational conscious mind overshadows the subconscious or the theta state where you see through the portals and things of that nature. So you're very conscious at that time. You become a conscious being rather than just functioning out of the theta state or the So kids, I mean, I just find kids very fascinating, and if I had my own children and so forth, hey, every morning I'd wake, I said, hey, it's time for our little chit-chat talk in the morning and talk about your dreams. I would absolutely do that, and the kids would tell you things that are happening, in their dreams, where they're going to. Oh, yeah, Grandma was there, and she was talking to me, and blah, 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 and like, well, Grandma's been dead for 10 years, and here's Grandma coming in and talking to her, so, that, after I found out more about the quantum, and again, there's this intelligence within the quantum. You can call it God, you can call it the divine, you can call it whatever. There's a source, there's an intelligence there, and that's the first principle of quantum physics is you have this intelligence and this consciousness, and it's participatory, meaning it likes to talk and interface with you. So once I found that out, I was like, my whole life just shifted, And so, and yes, you have these shadow beings, and you have just an array of different consciousness out there on these dimensional levels, pro, con, you're going to have low beings, higher beings, but it's, and then we can talk about too is like, and I was at a UFO conference in Lincoln one time, and Lloyd Albach came forward. He's this paranormal researcher, mentalist, and field investigator type guy. And he says, you know what? He would go in there and he said, oh, the plates were flying across the room and the doors were opening up, and plates were flying out. He says, you have any kids in the house? Oh, yeah. Most of the time, these kids get really angry, and that's when the blankly blank happens, The plates start flying. They don't realize how much power they have because they're in the quantum with their thoughts, and they get mad, and all hell breaks loose, with the kids. And I said, oh, that's a bunch of bullshit, so to speak, and I blah blah blah. No, it's not. It's real. The kids are very psychic, and if they get pissed off, they're a force to work with. They can cause a lot of hullabaloo, and when you get into that anger mood, guess what you're going to draw to yourself? You're going to draw all these other entities with you and get into that rush. And so they can create their little whirlpool, that little portal of anger and hurt and all that other stuff. And so you're going to draw those type of entities into the house. And so that's why the Catholic Church is coming in. We got to bless this room. We got to make it more holy. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to purge the negative forces out of the house. That's what they're really trying to do.
That's definitely an interesting way to look at it, because you're right. People are aware of just the talk or churches and religion wanting to really clean out negative energies, and that makes a lot of sense with what you're saying.
It's all mental. It's really very a mental and emotion. I should say more so emotional construct, and it just happens, It's just like I had a very emotional breakup, and that's when all hell broke loose with me. I had dreams, and I had my higher self came to me and started speaking to me, and and I started having sleep paralysis. There could be other beings in the room, with me. I just didn't see them, and so whatever, it's really, you have to be very careful and cautious about your mental state. So you always want to be happy-go-lucky, so to speak, so keep the spirits happy, and you're going to draw that to you. But as soon as you get oinky and live in the victimhood type of consciousness, well, guess what? You're going to draw those beings right to you, and you're going to draw the Darth Vaders and the shadow beings in on you. You're going to draw those folks into you.
Yeah. Well, Fred, one last question as we talk about all these things here briefly. Just being alert to certain situations, locations, and places. We've talked about some of these hot spots that people are aware of. Also, logical hot spots like, this is a crime scene. I want to go there and see if I'm spooked out. But in general, should people be just trying to be alert and receptive to negative energies of just a lot of places? Because maybe there's something lingering and it's not a well-known spot. Is it make sense to try to see if you feel weird feelings when you're in a certain place and then say, oh, do I want to be there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's common sense, when you walk up to you go up to a lake, or you go to somebody's house, somebody that you don't know of, and it's kind of strange too. It's like, I just think of a case where I had out in western Nebraska, and this couple was working the farm, and then the farm is a corporate entity in itself, and they had all these cattle, and they were out cutting down sorghum that day, and they came back home, and it was around 8 o'clock, and it's getting kind of darkish, and all of a sudden they start seeing these orbs flying around on top of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, and where'd you see them? It says right here, and then so all of a sudden she said she went over and saw the orbs, and she ran over into the truck, and she said it was like 8 o'clock, and then all of a sudden her husband comes down, and she was going to want to take the pictures, and all of a sudden she looks at the picture, and the timestamp is 8 o'clock, but there was like an hour difference between what happened of the timestamp on the picture and the time on the clock in the truck. I'm like, where was your husband? Where did he go? He ran up to the house, and then eventually I said, you need to talk to your husband and ask him what time he came down and was talking to you, because you have an hour of do-da-day happening here. And they were very religious, and she wrote back to me and says, this is where this case ends right now, because they didn't want to talk about it. So this is the hitchhiking effect. Once you start talking about it, then you're like, oh my God, we don't talk about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not agreeing with our belief patterns.
Right, and
this
it
is
shapes
outside. You. This is outside the box, and we want nothing to do with it. And she cut the case right then and there. We're done.
Wow.
Because I was going to tell you got missing time. The orbs could be entities of some sort. It could more likely ETs and so forth, but they like to project themselves as orbs.
You're right.
And so, but you have all this cattle and all the other stuff, and then the energies of the farm itself. There's a whole array of why them and why that time, and who knows what they were doing at the church, if they're really religious, and they were talking about various different things, and all of a sudden, funk, this thing happens. I have no reason. There could be a hitchhiker effect right there, where they were going to the church and they were talking about who knows what. I have no idea.
Man, this is crazy. Well, Fred, but thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. This is an important piece that I wanted to add to this conversation. And people, the hitchhiker effect. It's real.
It's real.
It's
bizarre. It is real.
Yeah.
So,
and it's out there.
Definitely feel from kind of clean yourself, and have a clean feeling about yourself, and just walk in and see what you feel. It's all about the heart. It's all about what you feel. And if it's not good, then you might want to just put a little bubble of white light around you, and then ask for the divine to be a blessing, and then
I'm out of here
and out the door.
Awesome. Well, let me wrap it up here. Let me keep you on the line here for a minute, Fred, and let's move on.
Okay.
Some people seem to be more prone to the paranormal hitchhiker effect. Why? Recent studies suggest that the UFO experiences might be having measurable changes in the brain, especially in the caudate putamen, a region linked to the learning and perception in your brain. This could make them more sensitive to electromagnetic changes and more likely to detect patterns others can't see, or maybe they just ignore it. Is it biology? Is it belief? Or is it something else?
It might be tied to human consciousness. Perhaps encountering the paranormal alters one's awareness, opening a person's perception to previously unseen realms. It's as though experiencing the paranormal tunes the mind to a new frequency, revealing signals that were always present but simply imperceptible before. It's like when a radio dials into a certain frequency and picks up the invisible signals that were there all along, just previously not received. Does an encounter in a haunted location dial us into a frequency that somehow makes us more aware of the strange entities that live around us all the time? In other words, does exposure to the paranormal grant an increased ability to perceive hidden dimensions?
The hitchhiker effect reminds us, sometimes we carry more than we know. Sometimes what follows us isn't ours, but it still leaves a mark. Whether it's real or in your dreams, what you encounter might just stay with you long after the moment is gone. Once again, I'm Tony, and this was the High Strangeness podcast. Thank you for joining today, and please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell somebody about us. And remember, There's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality, so always keep your eyes, ears, and minds open, and until next time, stay safe.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.